All right, welcome in. The floor is yours. An extension of 5 on the floor here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. I'm Ethan Skolnick. We've got Brian Fonseca above me. You can follow him at Brian Fonseca NY. Don't hold the NY against him. We've got Brady Hawk. You can follow him at Brady Hawk 305. And Alex Salido, you can follow, of course, at Tropical Blanket. No Greg tonight. He'll be back with us over the weekend. He's on a business trip, as are the Miami Heat right now. They're in Atlanta. They posted all the videos of them going up on the airplane today. Jimmy Butler brought his entire coffee business with him on the plane. I'm not exactly sure what he's doing with that. We are sponsored by our friend Mark Brown, marcbrownpa.com. He's the man with the plan in North Lauderdale. Look at that, the pointing the fingers and all that stuff. I saw him at Game 2 here at the arena. If Mark is the guy to go to if you need an estate plan, and you need an estate plan, all right? If you're young with a family especially, make sure that your money is going to the right place if something happens to you, if there's an unexpected tragedy, anything along those lines. But just seriously, get your estate plan done. He'll give you all the paperwork if anything happens to you. So who's going to make decisions for you, your executors, all that stuff. He'll make it real easy for you. He's also got there right there in-house a title company, so he can help you divest your real estate, and he can help you with your closings as well. He did that for me a couple times. So reach out to Mark, MARC, brownpa.com. Make sure you mention 5 Reasons. Everything is right there on the website. He's in North Lauderdale, just north of Cypress Creek off of Andrews Avenue. All right, today going to be a little bit of a looser format. I did starting 9 as well. Make sure you guys check that out. I addressed the whole Skip Bayless thing, so I'm not really going to do that tonight. We will take your comments. Any super chat comments, we'll make sure to get to them. Thank you, Jalen. I'm going to start here, though, with this, and I touched on this a little bit this morning. But we kind of saw this last night in the Philadelphia-Toronto game. There's a certain way that series go when one team is better than the other and has home court advantage, which is that you see that better team get the first 2 games, and then game 3, you always see the home team come out strong and push the other team. And then at the end, if the road team can just pull it out, series over. We saw that last night with Philadelphia and Toronto. Toronto comes out with a ton of energy. They're outplaying them for most of the game, but you still had the feeling as you were watching it, yeah, Philly probably has one last run in them, and they'll probably get the breaks at the end of the game, and they did, and now we know essentially that series is over. So I'll go to all you guys on this. I mean, what do you expect from Atlanta tomorrow, especially in light of the fact that Trae Young is basically out there begging people in Atlanta to be Hawks fans instead of Heat fans, which probably isn't going to work. So what are we expecting tomorrow? I'll start with you, Brian.
I'm expecting just kind of like similar to game 2, where I was expecting the Hawks to come out strong and punch them in the mouth, and then the Heat to eventually respond. And then later on in the second half, you see when things got close, Jimmy Butler was, he just had one of those nights and was able to pull away. And his offense was really the story there, coming through down the stretch. But then there was other guys like Gabe Vincent had a clutch 3 at the end, et cetera, et cetera. I think this time out, you're going to see the Hawks try to come out strong, and people are going to get a little nervous, especially on social media, like what's happening or whatever. And I think the Heat are going to ultimately respond. I think it's going to be a close game, and I was looking at some for betting purposes, like spreads and things of that nature. The number for the Heat was like -7.5 at home. I think probably something along those lines for game 1 as well. And now you have them favored or underdog. I don't even remember at this point. It's like 1.5. It's very close. Okay. So I think it's going to be something like that. But I do think that if you're the Heat, you should look to win this game for obvious reasons, not just because it's the playoffs, but you want to be in the position where you're up 3-0 going into game 4, as opposed to 2-1. It's like, damn, kind of got to win this road game now to not make it a 2-2 series going back to your home floor. So you want to just take care of business. And I think they will. Still waiting on Tyler Hero to have one of those games. Still waiting on Bam to have one of those games offensively. He's made a mark defensively, especially in game 1. But you're still waiting on that, right? And I think that's going to come. I think Tyler especially is going to feed off of, I guess what's going to be a 70-30 Pro Hawks crowd maybe in Miami or something like that. Maybe 60-40 or something along those lines.
50-50 by the fourth quarter, Brian.
Yeah,
usually.
yeah. So
and kind of filters out from that. And I guess Brady, when we talk about Trae, because he's such, he's the trigger in this series, and he's the guy essentially that makes everything go for them. I feel like Spoelstra is going to throw out another wrinkle in game 3. I don't see Eric is not the type just to stay with something game to game to game because it worked in one situation. We saw that the rotation got completely flipped in game 2 because of the foul trouble. I think they played him differently in game 2 than he would have otherwise, just because he had Caleb Martin on the floor. He wasn't expecting to have Caleb Martin on the floor necessarily when the game started. What is the next wrinkle to throw on Trae to give him something else to deal with?
I mean, I'd probably say similar things in general, but I think they'll mix in some other stuff. Like we saw just a total different menu of different defenders. First of all, like Kyle Lowry is the primary defender we've seen. The Bam switching, PJ switching, Jimmy switching. But I think maybe you see a little less blitzing, possibly. Like we see the trapping that's worked because it's led to turnovers. But when I think of Trae Young in this game 3 specifically, the way that Atlanta gets out early and makes that push with the crowd is that the shooters get going, I think, less than Trae Young gets going. So I feel like they got to stay home on shooters, that it's going to be more evolved on around that they're going to say, okay, you two in the action have to pretty much stick with Trae. We're not going to help as much. We're going to stay home on Gallo and Bogdanovich so that they don't get going. And let's just test. I know you don't want to test a scorer of his caliber, but just slightly test and see if he can get it done on 2 just high-level defenders instead of throwing kind of the whole team at him, kind of like Boston did a little bit against Kevin Durant, because they were just throwing everybody at him in yesterday's game. So it just feels like possibly they do the same thing. You're looking at Boston's thing. Maybe they back off a little bit just to see if he can kind of deal it with a team defense perspective. But I'd agree. You can't, with a player of Trae Young's caliber, you cannot go 3 straight games with a similar just defensive approach. Like it's just impossible. And specifically Erik Spoelstra is not going to trust going 3 straight games with the same approach. So I think they'd probably stick with the same rotation. It's hard to see them plugging in Caleb again, just because that was just the 10th man, foul trouble. Duncan Robinson couldn't really play in that game because of other reasons. I think they go back to the game 1-9, but I think they just mix in different coverages than we've seen.
Alex, this coming down in the comments, like, do you think Bam's affected by COVID and all that? It's hard for me. I mean, you and I did an episode on this yesterday that people should check out, but it's hard for me to point to something like that when he's holding opponents to 18% shooting in the series. Like it's not like he's getting trucked on the other end, right? Like it's just, we just haven't seen it from him offensively. So I don't know that there's a physical issue with Bam. I think it's just the way the 2 games have played out.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I just feel like, Bam just hasn't had the game yet where he's stood out yet. And it's like, like we talked about in the episode yesterday, it's just kind of getting people nervous, because you always got to be nervous about something even after 2 big wins. But I agree with everything you guys were saying as far as how game 3 is going to play out. Interested to hear, what Brady was saying there as far as the coverages, because I do think there's going to be, more or less a lot of the same stuff as far as, him always having to go through elite defenders. If he gets one of the Tres Leches matched up on him, he's going to have crazy help, always guys cheating off their man. But I do think, like, if the Hawks do get off to a strong start, it's going to be because of the shooters. And so to try to connect all of that back to the whole Bam conversation, I think that's kind of where Bam comes in, right? Because even though he's not always on Trae, he's getting switched on to kind of everybody around the team. So I think, he's going to be partly responsible for that. But I'm not necessarily worried until, this kind of keeps happening, right? And maybe that's a cop-out. I just don't think Bam is kind of had enough going wrong for it to become a legitimate concern yet. Like, I think, they go into game 3. Let's say, like, they need more from Bam. They're down. Everybody else is not playing well. That's when you're going to need a guy like Bam to step up. I just think it hasn't gotten to that point yet. And clearly they don't look to him to kind of be one of those main scorers. And we've talked about that plenty of times before. But, like, I think we all agree he should be second or third, at least, in field goal attempts when you talk about it on a night-to-night basis. And it feels like there's plenty of times where when everything else is going right, he can go down on that, right? And so not everything is about field goal attempts, but I do think you would definitely like to see more and just kind of, get Bam back feeling confident offensively.
Yeah, Royals in the comments telling us to blow it up. I don't know if it's to blow up this team or the Heat team. there you go. The thing about it, we've talked a lot about Bam and Tyler. Kyle's been quiet offensively, but Brady, you had a piece today about everything else that he's contributing right now. It does feel like he has the ability to just decide when he wants to be aggressive offensively. We've seen that all year, whether it's over a quarter, over a game, over a week, if they need it. When do you think that becomes necessary? Is it necessary in this series?
No, I don't, not yet, at least. Like, the thing it ties into the Bam thing The reason I'm not worried about it is because this series didn't call for Bam in a lot of ways. Yes, Capella's out. They had John Collins out for game one. There's matchup things where you could say, okay, Bam's better than this guy. He can go at him. But we said before this series, this is a perimeter series. And they've shown that when they don't need to, if they can work the perimeter, that they're the best three-point shooting percentage team in the regular season. They're not going to go to Bam in these spots if they don't have to. If they can burn everything through the perimeter against a team that cannot recover on rotations, like why go away from it? I think that ties into Kyle as well. Like his game in this series has been, okay, I'm going to get to the basket, not as a scorer, but I'm just going to pull these defenders in just enough to get the shooters going for my teammates. I think he's done a lot of good stuff in that way. I think he's done a lot of good stuff with that. They don't need to go to Tyler Bam pick and rolls as often, or even Kyle Bam pick and rolls as often. They've gone to a ton of Kyle and Jimmy pick and rolls. The reasoning is that Trae Young wants no part of Jimmy Butler. It's been shown that he is going to fight through a screen no matter what, because he does not want to get that switch. It's opened up so many kind of lanes and gaps and slots for Jimmy Butler. That's one of the reasons he went from 45 in game two. Like the fact that they're still, you turn on ESPN and they're saying Kyle Lowry had an underwhelming season. If you look at a box score, maybe, like I know Ethan, you pointed out the 13 and 8 you said before the season, but if you're watching, specifically the times where he has it clicking, nothing about his game is underwhelming with the terms of impact of getting Bam going on certain nights or getting shooters going on certain nights. And I feel like that's the type of thing. And his defense is elevated pretty high in these first two games. Like we were talking about, is he getting beat one-on-one? And we were having questions, is he getting to that point at his age now that is he not like at that level defensively? He's shown to be at that level defensively. He's been one of the primary guys to bother Trae. I still have that play in my mind. I think it was from game one where he picked his pocket and he ended up tossing it to Max, who got the dunk. Like he still has the abilities to do it. He's still like high IQ off the ball that I feel like he's been just vital in this series. And when we go through, we talk about Jimmy first. We talk about the role players in Gabe, PJ, Duncan, Max. Then we go and we say, okay, Tyler and Bam aren't playing that well. These are all the names that we're discussing. We haven't talked about Kyle Lowry a ton after these first two games, and it feels like we should.
I go back to one moment that I think when we look back at the series, we're going to say the series was pretty much over at this very moment because it's exactly what you said. Trae wants no part of Jimmy. 3 minutes into the first game where Jimmy got in Trae's face, series was over. In my view, because I feel like that was calculated on Jimmy's part. It's like, this is how this is going to be. And then you saw Trae now complaining about the officials. And now we don't have enough fans at home. Like they're in his head. Like they got in his head from the very beginning of the series. He's not conducting himself in a way that a villain that you're scared of would be conducting himself. I mean, he's like sort of a scared little boy right now, honestly. And I think that, that's why I thought he had one game in him. I'm not quite sure. I think they may finish this thing off in 4 as a result of that. I do want to get to this before we go around the league because, Royal says this. He can't tell if some of you are serious or trolling in the comments. So we're going to address this. What is it about Heat fans? What is it about Heat fans? And this is no disrespect to anybody watching because we appreciate all of you guys. So we always start no disrespect before you insult somebody. But here we go, okay? What is it about Heat fans that you're up 2-0 in a series, okay? Milwaukee, we're going to talk about stuff around the league. Milwaukee just lost its second or third best player for a couple weeks. The number one team in the league just lost its best player because he is their best player at this point for a couple of weeks. Kevin Durant went 0 of 10 in the second half yesterday. Okay, so teams are having problems all over the place. The Heat are cruising at 2-0, and we're getting, why isn't Depot starting? Why isn't Morris playing ahead of Dedmon? And we need to get Yurt ready for the Philadelphia series. What is this? Because we've gone through, I'm not going to address the Yurt thing. I'm sorry. I'm just not going to do it. Okay. But as far as Oladipo and Morris go, we've addressed all this stuff a million times. Okay. Oladipo is not playing right now. It has nothing to do with the problem with Jimmy Butler or anything like that. It has to do with fit. Okay. It has to do with fit. Okay. He needs the ball in his hands. There are not rotations right now that he's going to get the ball in his hands where they're still going to get space. Markieff Morris, they want a guy off the bench in Dedmon who plays big. That's what they want right now. That doesn't mean Morris won't play at some point, but that's what they want. But can we address, I'm going to let Brian handle this because you're coming in from New York. Does this happen in every city?
Well, You're asking the wrong person, because in New York it's probably worse, and they're not used to success. What gets me about
Who do they want to play? I mean, who's not playing that could be playing in New York? I mean, I'm talking about the Knicks, not the Nets.
What gets me about Heat fans, though, is that you guys really don't know how good you have it. Just in terms of just being a fan of this team and this organization, who can almost, not fully, but almost do no wrong. When they step in it, they get themselves out of it. Got Jimmy Butler without cap space, was able to get LeBron James, like was able to have a lot of success since I was like born, basically, because the year after Pat Riley got to the Miami Heat and changed shit. So like they've been relevant and good basically the entire time I've been alive, which is not something I could say literally about any other organization that is from the same hometown that I'm sitting in right now. So I think you guys got to just relax. And look, another thing is, like, as somebody made a comment earlier, I'm forgetting who it was, that the East is wide open because of like some of the injuries. And this is part of the wear and tear stuff. I'm not going to get into the whole thing that I got into on Twitter last night about it. You can go look at that. But like, yo, these injuries, unfortunately, in the case of Devin Booker and Chris Middleton, not to say that they were to be expected, but they're not ultimately surprising because they had the same amount of rest that the Heat and Lakers had before last year's season began.
Right.
And you're talking about two guys, exact same, 6-7 weeks. Two guys who went straight from the NBA Finals to Tokyo to win a gold medal. And then 6 weeks later, here's training camp. Guess who has wear and tear injuries right now? So look, if you're a Heat fan, you got to like just chill because they're up 2-0. And yes, Tyler Hero should wake up at some point. Bam should wake up at some point. But like, look, man, this is not anything to worry about when you compare your situation to other people's situation right now along the Eastern Conference.
All right, Alex, we're gonna do 10 minutes of your talk now. No, we won't. Let me ask you this question right now. Haven't things played out perfectly? I mean, it strikes me that, yes, Boston will be a formidable opponent on the other side of the bracket if you get there, but they're not the Bucks. The Bucks are going to beat the Bulls anyway. But they're probably not beating Boston without Chris Middleton. I wouldn't believe so, particularly if Robert Williams is back by that point, right? And Middleton's injury is evaluated in 2 weeks. It's not back in 2 weeks. It's evaluated in 2 weeks, okay? I mean, I would think that makes Boston the favorite to come out of that side of the bracket, the way that things have played out right now. And Brian, you're up in Brooklyn. I don't think the Nets fans are going to will the Nets to victory. Okay, I mean, so to me,
Ben Simmons is not fixing all that shit.
Ben Simmons is not, and neither is that crowd. So like it seems to me, Alex, like this thing has played out right. I mean, so far, I don't know what there would be to complain about. Yes, Lynette, they are in a good place. I agree.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with all of that. Like, I think it's unfortunate, and I thought Brian brought up a good point as far as the Tokyo thing. When he brought it up, I'm like, wait, that was last summer? Like, it feels like so long ago. Yeah. And then I remembered Bam already had his injury, and he was one of those players who went over there. He had his injury earlier this season, so I thought that was a good point. But, like, man, everything really has gone well. I think the Hawks have proven to be just not any sort of test or resistance at all, and it's gotten people nervous, right? Because it's like, what happens when we do get there? Is Bam going to be good enough? Is Tyler going to be good enough? What happens when we do get there? But I think people are also getting scared because they're watching Embiid and Harden just rack up all these fouls over and over. The Raptors, even though I thought they would lose in 7, it's clear now to me that obviously they're missing Scotty Barnes too, but they just don't have the bodies to be able to defend Embiid without fouling. Like, they have to be overly physical there. And the bigs that they're throwing on them, Precious Achiuwa, like we've seen, man, he cannot guard Joel Embiid. I like Precious as a prospect. He's showing off a little jumper this year. Good for him. I like his measurement.
He also missed 2 late free throws, Alex, which was the most predictable thing ever.
He gave up the 3 to Embiid for the win. I mean, he got hit with the screen, but you're like, you're supposed to be big and strong. You should be able to get through a screen. But no, really, not to get on Precious here. I just think, like, they're completely undermanned and just completely overwhelmed. Like, they have nothing for him. That Sixers offense is running like hell, and I think people get nervous. And now, like, I agree with you. I don't think the Bucks can beat the Celtics without Middleton. I think Rob Williams is probably going to be back by the end of this series. Who knows if the Nets can come back or not? But it does seem like, if everything bodes well, it's going to be Heat Celtics conference finals. And that matchup still gets me a little bit nervous, but they don't have Giannis, right? So that's kind of the biggest thing there. That defense will test the hell out of the Heat if they do get there. But look, everything is going right. Like, I don't know how you can go and say otherwise.
I mean, a second round matchup against Philadelphia is an appropriate second round matchup. I think we talk about Atlanta, and you're right. It's like Heat fans have pivoted from being freaked out about everything that could go wrong to now saying, well, it hasn't gone wrong enough. Like we're not getting enough of a challenge from Atlanta. We need more of a challenge. I would make the argument you don't want a challenge right now. You don't want to challenge, not because you're going to risk losing the series. There was never a chance. Sorry, Worldwide Wob, of ever losing this series. Okay, you were not going to lose to Atlanta, but you just want as few games as possible. That's where I'm at, because every game you play,
looks like that Sixers series is going to be over quick. So
right. Well, first you want to match their rest, but additionally, you want to not risk injury. You don't. Every game you play, you are risking a guy getting hurt. And this also gets back to the other point that's being made on the comments. The fact that they have Morris and Oladipo kind of in reserve right now means that as long as you don't have, a Jimmy or Bam, like significant long-term playoff injury, you might be able to overcome the absence of a player or two, because you have guys in Oladipo or Morris who are better than some of the guys that are being thrown in.
I don't like
by
this.
some
This
of
is
these
making
other
me
teams.
nervous. This type of talk is making me nervous.
I knocked on wood when
Something's
you said
gonna
it.
happen. Look,
Just
here's the
jinx the
thing.
whole team.
You're not going to get through an entire playoff run with nothing. You're not, okay? Especially during a COVID period. There's going to be something, okay? But you look at
you're using your jinx powers for good now by saying that there will be.
I am. I'm going the opposite direction. But look at
Backtrack.
But look at the 2012. Look at the 2012 playoffs. You lost Chris Bosh. And you were trotting out Dexter Pittman for 3 minutes to start a game until Spoelstra was like, no, that's not happening again. I mean, I saw the look on Dexter's face. He never played again in the NBA, and I knew he wouldn't. He came to the bench. I love Dexter. Dexter was the biggest Adele fan I've ever seen. He had like Adele screensaver and all the rest of the stuff.
Got to the NBA, got some checks, and lost a lot of weight.
He was a great dude, but he came back to the bench. They were down like 13-2 in Indiana. He came back to the bench after 3 minutes. This was the big adjustment Spo made. And he looked at Spo, and Spo looked at him, and I turned to everyone. I said, he's never going to play again. He never played again. They went to Battier, and they went to Ronnie Turioff, and then eventually they plugged in Bosh with Battier. But they lost Bosh for a period of time. They had to adjust. They had LeBron and Dwayne to help them adjust. Okay, and those guys went nuclear against Indiana, but they were on the brink without Bosh being totally healthy against Boston. My point is, something is going to happen. There's going to be a suspension. Like somebody, we saw Chris Anderson get suspended the last few years. There's going to be some kind of a suspension for technicals. There's going to be COVID. There's going to be an injury. The fact that Miami has good players in reserve may mean something here. And I think people should look at that, and you just don't want to take chances with it. All right, let's get to some of this. Udonis has them backup power forward from Ben. That's a good one. All right, let's go around the league a little bit before we get to some of the comments, because I mean, some of the chalk is not playing out in the West. Timberwolves are up now on Memphis. Maybe they go up 2-1 in that series. Give me percentages here, okay? Percentage chance that Phoenix, I'll start with you, Brady. Percentage chance that Phoenix gets upset by New Orleans in that series without Booker.
Maybe 20%. I'm honestly not high on it, to be honest. Like, I think the Suns are still going to win it. And it may sound crazy because they just lost Devin Booker, but they didn't get to 60 wins or whatever they got to just because of Devin Booker. Like, they're still a solid team, and they have a bunch of scores on the other end that they can lose, especially if they're heading back to New Orleans. But if other guys stay healthy, specifically Chris Paul, I think they could still win the series. So I'm not too high on that upset as more as others.
Brian, Minnesota, chances of beating Memphis.
Ooh, 18.2%. I think but I think Memphis should be fine. I mean, they ain't looking too good today, but I think Memphis should be fine. I do think that not too many people, but I did see a certain section of people really sleep on Minnesota going into the series. And for me, it wasn't about sleeping on Minnesota as much as it's like I was never that convinced that Memphis was just going to walk through them, because I had questions about Memphis in the regular season and how it would translate to the playoffs, which we sort of seen play out in game 1 and now in game 3. But I still think Memphis wins that in 7.
Alex, we'll do some rapid fire here. Alex, who concerns you more in a Philadelphia series right now? James Harden or Tyrese Maxey?
Who concerns me more? Probably
Heat
Maxey,
perspective.
because I'm still saying Harden's a better player, but probably Maxey, because we know how the Heat defend. We know that they're going to be scrambling like hell to keep Embiid contained, and Harden is going to be second on that priority list. Now we'll see if they just defend him one-on-one and don't send help whenever he has the ball, which I would like to see, because I think that he can defend him one-on-one. I don't think he's got the burst that he used to. I would just let him do that, but because I don't expect them to do that, because I expect them to continue helping off other guys like they do, I think Maxey's going to have a couple games where he goes crazy. So I'm definitely a little bit concerned about Maxey, because I just think the game plan with Harden, they probably already have something there. And I think Maxey's going to be like the guy who gets, chances off the bounce where when guys are helping, like those types of opportunities where he can really get killed. And also Maxey is really damn good at, he's just awesome playing off of those guys and the attention that they bring. So Maxey's my answer.
Brady, is this Boston team better or worse than the team that the Heat played 2 years ago?
Oh, they're better. I think they're better. First of all, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are much better players than they were at that time. But the defense is real. And I think we learned that. I said last night that, people were so focused. I even saw on Colin Cowherd's show, he did a bracket where it was the face of the teams, and he went through to see who that would go through. That's not how this works. This isn't fantasy basketball. The high-level defenses we've seen, like Boston, can overcome high-level 2-player, 1-player talents. It's just the way it is now. That a Trae Young, even though Trae Young was better than Jimmy Butler in that bracket, and Kevin Durant's better than Jason Tatum in that bracket, that doesn't mean anything. That I just feel like the way that Boston's growing, specifically when they get Robert Williams back, we're still seeing the way Al Horford can do things at Kevin Durant and these other guys, that when they get that full kind of front court together, that it's just intriguing, I think, as Miami's defense. And I do want to say that the thing about the Philly matchup that's interesting to me, because I do agree that Maxey's kind of the guy you'd worry about more. I think those matchups are more interesting than anything if you go through them, because I think Maxey would probably see Jimmy the most in terms of Jimmy would be guarding Maxey. They'd probably go PJ on Harden and Bam and Embiid to do that little switching thing. They could throw different bodies on them. Thibel's the guy you throw Max Strus on because he's not much of an offensive threat. And Kyle Lowry can guard perimeter fours, or at least at the beginning, to test them. They're going to test Tobias Harris because he's kind of the X factor that if he plays well, their team elevates in a lot of ways. That Kyle Lowry guarding John Collins on switches or Gallinari on switches is going to continue from series to series. And I think that's just something to watch.
Well, I love the Tucker on Harden matchup. First thing, he knows him well, but he loves him, but he won't give an inch. But also, Harden's not going to be able to pick up as many cheap fouls on PJ, because PJ is real good at avoiding that stuff. And he'll get a few, but he's not going to get enough of them. That would be an interesting matchup. The thing about Boston too is it's amazing. It feels like Kemba Walker was the ultimate addition by subtraction, because the Heat picked on him 2 years ago, something significant in the Eastern Conference Finals, and him not being there, I think actually turns out to be helpful to them. But right now, if I had to say right now, and again, Phoenix getting Booker back at some point, we'll see what state they're in. But is it fair to say, Brian, that Golden State looks like the best team in the league right now?
Yes. And on top of that, they also have the experience with Steph, Clay, Draymond. You figure that Jordan Poole has been integrated in some way, not just on the court, but off of it, and adapting certain mannerisms and certain habits and being around those guys, all that other stuff that people don't talk about as much, intangibles, all that shit matters. And they also have Steve Kerr as their head coach. So the Warriors have all those things going in their favor, where even pre-Devin Booker injury, while I wouldn't call them the favorite, I would call them somebody who can really actually challenge them and get to the finals. And now with that being in question, maybe he's back by the conference finals, but at the same time, the Warriors are the team coming out of the West. As of right now, we'll see what happens with injuries and such, but they will be the team coming out of the West, in my opinion, depending on what happens with the Devin Booker situation.
Who is a tougher matchup for the Suns in the next round? Again, we don't know Booker's status. Who's a tougher matchup, Alex? Is it Dallas or is it Utah?
It's Dallas. It's not even
if Luke is healthy.
Come on. It's not even close. It's not close. That Jazz team is just waiting to collapse. They look like Sixers West from the past couple of seasons. It's just not going well over there. And I think things could have gone differently if they secured that game too, because it's just hard to come back from down 0-2. But I had Dallas in the series the whole time, and I think the difference between this Dallas team and the past two Luka's been on, where he obviously, overperformed in the playoffs in the sense that he was able to match up with superstars both times. The difference is now that team defense is really nice, man. Like just in general, the Mavs defensive infrastructure is just so much improved. I feel like between Kleber, Dorian Finney-Smith, you got Jalen Brunson, not defensively, but just in general, his improvement. Like they've got a lot of pieces that make a lot of sense and are playing well together. They're locking people up. And so not that I think they'll beat the Warriors, but I think that'll be a pretty good series. It should be, a nice little test for Luka. I don't think they'll get past,
wait, Dallas is in the Phoenix bracket, right? Yeah. Or am I wrong?
Oh,
yes.
Wait.
They are.
Dallas is in the Phoenix bracket because that's the 4-5 bracket.
Yeah. You just completely threw me off. Okay.
Well, there you go.
So that means the Warriors are going to play the winner of Grizzlies Timberwolves.
Yes.
Yeah. So that wasn't the question about who was going to be the tougher matchup for the Warriors?
No, it was for the Suns, but that's okay.
Oh my God.
It's fine.
I misunderstood.
I'll give you a chance.
Mavs Suns will be a good one too, though.
At the end of the day, at almost the end of the show. All right, I got one more thing for these guys before I do, though. PrizePicks.com. Make sure you use the code 5, FIVE. Got a ton of signups lately. This is the official fantasy sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. You can play, as well as NBA, you can play MLB, NHL, any of the other sports. You can pair players from different sports, 2, 3, 4, 5 players together. As many as you want. Power play, flex play, go all in, go halfway in. The reason I keep saying the code 5 is the code 5 gives you that bonus. So you put down $100, they will give you $100 to play with. You put down $20, they'll give you $20. Whatever you do, they'll match it, but then you don't have to play it all at once. So go to prizepicks.com, use the code 5. All right, so the funniest thing I heard today, the clip was posted from Levitard's show that I guess they're summoning everybody for a Heat Sixers series, including Ethan Skolnick's Minions. So I guess I'm gonna have to change the name of one of the shows to the Minions. But let's go to 3 of the Minions here.
We've been called on.
So let's go to this. Does this series come back to Miami? Alex, this is the Atlanta-Miami series, by the way, not the Golden State series. Does the series come back to Miami?
I said yes before we started the series. I'm going to say no now. I think they're shook ones. I don't think they have any real adjustments. I still wouldn't be surprised if they got a game. I just think, like, from their whole demeanor, everything about them doesn't look like a team that's going to adjust and win a game, even though they can get hot. So, no. The series is going to be over by next week, and we won't be playing we won't go to a Heat game where the Hawks are playing the Heat next week.
Brady?
I'm close to that, but I think it goes 5. Like I said 5 before, and I just still feel like they can explode at least one game where Miami just kind of doesn't have it in the end. Like, personally, I think, like, if it's a close game down the stretch, and I said this before, I'm taking Miami. And we said the opposite in most matchups where we're like, okay, if it's a close game, Miami doesn't have the late game offense. Against this team, they do. But I just feel like I don't know if it's going to be game 3. I'm kind of looking at game 4 as the one that they kind of sneak away with, where it's like a Trae Young pride thing that he can't get swept. He kind of comes out in game 4, they get one, and then Miami just takes care of business in game 5.
Brian?
Basically where Brady's at. Because before the series even started, I thought it was going to be 3-1 going back to Miami, with Atlanta winning that 4th game, just because also sometimes the Heat just be fucking around and they might just give up a game because, like, all the things that people worry about sort of manifest itself, and they lose a close game in game 4, and then in game 5 they get their shit together and then end up winning the game. So I think it's still Heat in 5 in this series.
Yeah, I'm still going Heat in 5 in this one, and I think I'm going to flip it though. I originally thought that Hawks would get game 3. I also think it's going to be game 4. I think Miami will relax a little bit in game 4. I could see the Hawks stealing one, but at this point, I almost lean towards Alex too, because I just
think the Sixers winning game 3 is going to make the Heat come out and be on their shit, knowing that they have to match that rest.
Possibly. Possibly. I do think there'll be some urgency here. I think the desire also to get those days rest. I don't know if they'll all go to the Bahamas again, but they can't open the next series until the following Saturday. So if they finish this thing off on Sunday, they're looking at Monday, Tuesday, they're looking at a full work week and Eric will give him a day or two off before he kind of grinds on it again. It'd be very similar to the last period of time that they had, which we know when Eric has that much time to prepare.
To actually prepare for.
Well, right. And well, this time he'll know, and they have, they have a book on the Sixers. Like they know they know, they know what the Sixers like to do. They've seen Harden plenty over the years. Like they'll kind of have an idea. So I do think maybe there'll be a little bit more urgency to finish it, but I just think Trae I still am waiting for the one game where Trae just goes off. We've seen him capable of that. They didn't play very well against Cleveland on the road in the play-in game, and they had like 6 minutes where he turned the whole thing. I can see that happening in either a game 3 or a game 4. We know that no matter what happens, that ESPN will be talking Nets Lakers. I will finish this just with one other thing though, because for people who didn't see it on the morning show, there is nothing to the Skip Bayless report about Oladipo and Jimmy Butler. Okay, I've said it on every show now. Going to keep saying it. He's pulling stuff out of his ass. Have a good night, everybody.